What's going on YouTube? This is Rybo at the kitchen table today. I found an old mahogany, African mahogany board that I had created years ago. So I thought, while the bench is out of commission, I will just film on this. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go to my channel, look at the pinned video at the top, and you'll see a massive oak that took out my workshop, my workbench, and most of my tools. So I'm making do until then, and this came across in a pass around, and this is the elusive Slysz or Swish Bowie from Spyderco that is no longer made. This was made famous by Nick Spaz and has been very, very difficult to get since then. So I wanted to film a video with it while it was on the table. And so that's what we're going to do. So this is a very, very uninformed opinion. I haven't had a ton of time with this, and honestly, with everything going on, the channel's really been kind of on the back burner. So these are just some quick thoughts after carrying it for a couple days. I'm not super informed about it. It's never been a knife that I have been, that interested in, besides just kind of the cool factor of it being a very desirable knife. And so, I don't have the most informed opinion here. These are just kind of my thoughts, which is really what most of the channel is. So I don't have my calipers. A lot of my tools were destroyed, so I'm just going to use this very simple USPS ruler here, and so this just gives you a rough idea of size. I'm not going to go through and measure everything just because that would be very difficult. Size comparison, so I am doing a head-to-head review of this and the Spidey Chef, but you can see they are roughly equivalent in size. Also, another one of my favorites, the Laconico Mass Drop Keen. I always want to call that the Ferrum Forge Keen. That is the Mass Drop Keen, and just because the Sabenza 31 small. So you can see this is a somewhat large knife. I think gives a lot of room for good ergonomics, yeah, good size knife. I don't have the scale on hand either. That was also kind of destroyed. I think it still works, but don't have it with me right now. So we're just going to go right into it. So things that I like about the Spyderco Swish or Slysz Bowie. First of all, I would just say, one of the things I like about this knife is that at its core, if you take away all of the context, all of the background, all of the mystique, this is just a functional tool. And I really like that. I like functional tools. Honestly, this knife is as close to like a, not art knife, but, and this is still a very, very functional tool, but I love this knife. I really like simplicity. I really like knives that are made to cut, made to do kind of everyday task items. And there's something about this knife that is just so simple and plain and rugged, and I really, really respect that. And so you take away all of that mystique and you get down to just the knife itself, and this is a very functional tool and something that's very practical for daily use. Other things I like, so the blade is really fantastic. So this has a thinner blade than like on the Spidey Chef. Has a very nice kind of swedge up here, almost forming like a clip point blade. Very nice grind. I think just a classic, full flat Spyderco blade. And just a really, really nice slicer. This is CTS XHP, which is one of my favorite steels, although it has some corrosion issues in my experience. But love the steel. I think it's fantastic. And I really like this detail here, where on the Spidey hole, typically you would have a little bit more space. I like how they just came up right up to the edge. I think that's actually a really, really cool detail. I don't know, kind of dumb, but I really like that. I think it just looks really good. And overall, I think the blade is just very practical. I like that you have enough room here, some nice little jimping here to get your thumb on, and that's about where my hand tends to fall. So very, very comfortable, and I think that's how you would use the blade, and so that feels really good to me. Other things that I like, so the action, well, not really the action, but the lock bar and the open-close action on this knife is really, really good. Very, very smooth, no lock stick whatsoever. Just very, very easy to disengage that lock bar, very easy to push over. That's been really, really nice. There are knives that do that very well. I think the Keen is an example of a knife that does that exceptionally well. And then there are knives that you know, don't do that quite as well. And I think this one does very, very nicely. You have nice action on those bronze washers. Very, very smooth, just very satisfying. And I think the kind of Spidey hole cutout here gives you perfect access to that lock bar. You have like kind of a scalloped edge in here. And if you compare that to something like the Spidey Chef, you have something very similar in there, but for whatever reason, I tend to have an easier time accessing this lock bar. I don't know if it's just the kind of beveling on the edges or if it's slightly larger, but I have a much easier time accessing the lock bar on the Bowie here. So that's really nice. Other things that I like, this is not the standard clip. This is a fantastic clip, but the standard clip is the wire clip, which I'm a huge wire clip fan. I think it's a good choice for this knife. So I do really, really like that. Other things that I like, I like just the overall size. I think it's a pretty good size. It's a little bit heavy handle to blade thickness, but I think what you kind of give up with that and maybe some extra weight and extra thickness in the pocket, you definitely get back in ergonomics, because to me, this fits the hand very, very well. A little bit thicker, a little bit more contouring to the handles, but I think it works really, really well in hand, and you know, feels really, really good. The jimping back here on the back spacer and the fact that it has a back spacer does fill out your hand a little bit better. While I don't love the way it looks, I do think that it functions pretty well. Other things that I like, that might be about it. I mean, all in all, this is, you know, this knife is kind of what I like about Spyderco. It's very functional. It's primarily a knife first, and then it is whatever else second. So this is primarily a knife first, and then it is object of knife community fascination second. And so I really like that it is just a great functional tool that is easy to use. You know, it is definitely one of those contenders for, you know, the only knife that you would need from, you know, office carry. Well, you probably won't want to carry this in the office, but, you know, just from everyday tasks to also camping and hiking and stuff like that. It's rugged enough to kind of stand up to that, and it's a great option. All right, so things that I don't like about the Slysz or Swish Bowie. So first of all, I don't love the finish on the titanium here. It's kind of this stone-washed finish, but it's super, super glossy. I've found myself kind of sliding off of it, not necessarily when I'm holding the knife like this, because I'm fairly locked up with the jimping, but when I've closed it or when I'm trying to disengage, I do find myself kind of slipping around because it is very, very slick. And so I would like a little bit more of a chalkier finish, maybe some bead blasting or something like that. Also, I'm not really a stonewash guy, and this has what looks to me like a very light stonewash. Not so much that you would really notice unless you have a problem like me, but I don't love it. It does look nice, I guess, with the handle, because it kind of carries through to the titanium finish, but in general, not really my style. Other things that I don't like, I don't love the way that the back spacer looks, although I think that it functionally works very well. So that's kind of a function over form type thing, and that I'm fine with. So really the only other thing that I don't love is the knife is just a tad bulky. I mean, you can see where this blade is going in. You just have a lot of titanium that's hanging out here, which does a lot of things ergonomically. But in the pocket, you just have a much bigger knife than you could potentially have. I think it carries very well. I mean, you have this clip that's on the left side of the lock bar. You know, it's classic Spyderco. It's tucking away that knife, but it is a little bit big. It's a little bit bulky. I think that is one improvement that he made with the Spidey Chef, where he just kind of thinned everything down just a little bit, made it a little bit more efficient, and I think a little bit easier to carry every day. This one I did tend to notice in the pocket. Not bad, not terrible. There are knives that are certainly greater offenders than this, but I did notice it. So that is one thing that I'm not a huge fan of. But all in all, final conclusions, cut or carry, I would definitely give this a carry, although I don't think that you really can practically, because they don't make it anymore and it's ridiculously expensive when you can find one. all in all, I think it's a good design. I think that I don't know why Spyderco doesn't make it anymore. I'm glad that they have the chef now. I think that this speaks to a really fantastic knife designer. Something that's very utilitarian, functional, and yet just has something about it that is just so cool. So great knife. I would definitely recommend it, but unfortunately, it is near impossible to get. Hope you've enjoyed this review, and I'll see you next time.